Hey everybody, I'm Yvonne Williams with Back to Earth Creations, and in this video I want to show you guys how I'm going to wrap one of our groovy style cabochons in a spiral setting like this piece here that we've made in a previous tutorial that maybe is popping up on a card, but will certainly hopefully be down in the video description. But I'm going to be showing you how to make it a little bit fancier by incorporating some beads. I do think this is pretty beginner friendly, just depending on how craftily inclined you are, and maybe you're new to wire wrapping but you have previous crafting experience. This might be, I don't know, everybody as a beginner starts at different levels. So while I would feel confident in teaching this to a group of beginner wire wrappers, always gauge for yourself if you think something is maybe a little bit out of your depth. That's okay. You can work up to it. And we do have other tutorials that are very, very even more beginner friendly. So if this one right here is like a level 1, this might be a little bit of a level 2, and what we're going to be covering today is about a 2.5. So we're going to be using a Groovy cab, which we do sell on our website, backtoearthcreations.com. There are links to all the tools and materials down in the video description below. This is one of the gemstone cabs that we carried that I was grinding and it broke. So I went ahead and reground it, and I'm using it for my own purposes now. And oh, there's a big old bug in here. And then we have some seed beads. You can use any sort of bead that you like. The main thing that we're going to be watching out for, though, is I'm going to be using 20 gauge wire. You could use an 18 gauge, but if this is your first time or you don't feel like you have a whole lot of strength in your hands, 20 gauge is very forgiving. But you'll want to make sure that your beads fit onto your wire, and that you can, if you're using like a faceted bicone or something like that, sometimes if you force the bead on there and then try to do this with the wire and there's any kind of pressure coming from inside of the bead, your bead can like flake and chip and stuff. So you'll just want to make sure that your bead fits on and that you're not over forcing it onto the stone, or onto the bead. So with the 20 gauge wire from parawire.com, this is a non-tarnish enameled copper core, and it really is just, I love it. I never have any problems with the colors that I use with flaking or anything like that. And I've pulled so far an entire arm span, because this design, y'all, this design uses a bunch of wire. So if you're thinking you want to try this in sterling silver, I do recommend, because I'm going to pull off a second arm span, which is about 10 feet of wire. But I really want to give myself a whole lot of extra to be able to get wild with. Because I think on this one here, I used like 5 feet of wire folded in half. So, and you'll see what I mean by that. So it ended up, I only had like 2.5 feet to do all the spirals with, and I was really pushing it there towards the end. So just testing out, and then I'll measure at the end how much wire we end up cutting off, and that might give you a better idea. But again, if you're going to be doing this with sterling silver, or even just like gold filled or something wire, it might be a good idea to test it out in copper or an inexpensive wire first, just so that you can kind of gauge for yourself. And also different sizes of stones. A smaller stone, while can be wrapped in this style, is going to use significantly less wire than a larger stone. Pardon me, I've got like crazy allergies today. So other than our selection of beads, our grooved cab, and our 20 gauge wire, I also have wire snips, mandrel pliers, which if you don't have these, you could use knitting needles or a pen or like a stick mandrel, round nose pliers, and bent nose pliers. So I've folded our wire in half, like I found the center of it, and we're going to decide which side's going to be the top of our stone. Ooh, that's quite pretty from every angle, actually. So I'm going to be taking an opportunity to kind of demonstrate if you have a chipped or broken stone. And I'm going to have the top be this broken off part. Gosh, that is just such a pretty lab. Sorry, I could just sit here all day and just look at the labradorite. So I'm nestling our 20 gauge wire there into that groove. That I do have a separate tutorial showing how I groove my own cabochons. That hopefully will be linked down in the video description as well. If not, you can check out our YouTube channel, and we have playlists and over 800 tutorials. So that's not including our live streams, that's just our tutorials. So I kind of made a little bit of a cross there and then twist tied it. I want to focus just on teaching now instead of plugging our other videos. Oops. Okay, and also we're going to be hearing that a whole lot because I have about 5 feet of wire trailing off to the side behind me. Thank goodness the cats are upstairs with Randy, because they'd be losing their ever-loving minds. So, we still have a little bit of wiggle there. I've twisted twice in a little like twist tie motion, and I'm going to grip with my pliers again and give it a little bit more of a twist. Now, we don't want the twisting so hard that we're snapping through our wire, because while copper wire is soft, it can cut through itself. So that's something to be mindful of. And now I'm going to come in, and I think for this one, I'm actually going to use, instead of using my mandrel pliers, I'm going to demonstrate with, well, heck, where'd it go? Oops, and now I'm just making messes too, aren't I? Well, I thought I'd use my mandrel, but I've lost it. I was cleaning so that I could find things. Here we go. We're going to use a paintbrush because that's what I have, apparently. And you could put your mandrel on the back side of your pendant and make the bail that way. But if you were to do that, your bail would be offset towards the back. If you have it to where your mandrel's in the front, you can kind of bend it towards the front, and that'll make your bail be a little bit more offset. So it's a very minor detail that is easily solved with a good smush, but it's something to be mindful of. That whenever I'm teaching, I try to think like, I'm doing it this way, why am I doing it this way? Because if you can understand the purpose and intent behind something, then if you can be like, well, if I want to get a different effect, then I'll change this step. So I think it's very important to be, to understand why you did something the way that you did, or why I did something the way that I did. So, yada, yada, yada. Let's get to wrapping. And being careful to not twist my wires, I'm just wrapping twice because I would like a wider bail. If you wanted a narrower bail, you could just wrap around once. But I wanted a wider bail on this one. So I do 2 wraps. You could do 3. Let's do 3. Get hecka thick with it. And now from here, I'm coming around behind like this. And I'm going to wrap once and wrapping around again twice. Now I'm not super worried if my wire gets twisted up or anything. That's going to give it a very cool, like, natural vining look. I'm going to set my paintbrush back over there. And you can see that gave us like a really neat looking bail. And now that we've twisted twice, I can tug on this and do all sorts of wrapping and things, and it's not going to distort the nice even loops of our bail. So now, how are we going to wrap with including the beads? So I want to demonstrate real quick. I'm going to pull off just a bit of, man, this is all kinds of tangly. I'm going to demonstrate with a side section of 20 gauge. So you could follow along with this if you like and get some practice in before we start on our actual piece. And I'm going to fold it in half. So these are about, 9 or 10 inches long. And I'm just folding this in half to make it behave like it's 2 pieces of wire side by side. And we're going to start by doing the itsy bitsy spider motion, which, taking your 2 fingers together like this, palms, left palm up, right palm down, or vice versa. And we just want to go like this. So our fingertips are staying touching. And I would ask you to practice this motion with me because it can look obvious to your eyeballs, but sometimes making your hands do it gets a little like wonky. So we've practiced that motion, and now we're going to hold between our fingers and thumbs our wire, and hold the wire between our fingers and then grip it. And from here we will do that hand motion, and you can see that made a very nice little loop. It might be a little looser than what you want. If it's kind of growing side to side, then just take it and give it a smush. But now you can take it, place that loop between your fingers, and twist again. And here we're building up a really nice, it's going to look a little prettier maybe from one side than the other, and that's your own preference. But now we're building up a nice little viney spiral. And then from here you can just grip that spiral between your fingers. That way it doesn't, grow. We want to be like it's drawing on paper, very two-dimensional. We don't want it to be growing just yet. That might be something that you want to do in the future, but for the sake of this tutorial, we're gonna do it this way. Grip that spiral between your finger and thumb, or you could use nylon jaw pliers or something to really hold on to it for you, and just bend that wire around. And this is the concept of spiral that we're going to be utilizing through this entire piece. So now we have a spiral without a bead. Let's test making a spiral with a bead. So again, I have our test wire bent in half, and we're going to take one of the beads that we're going to be using, and we're going to thread it on. I personally like to have my bead be on the part of the wire that is going to end up being that very center wire there. We have the windows and doors open, so like a giant horsefly came into the house. I don't know if you can hear it buzzing around, but it's freaking me out. So to make sure that the bead is on the inside, since the way that I bend is towards me, I have the bead on the wire that's close to me. If you start with your left hand on top and bend this way, the wire will have wrapped around it. So just, again, that's why we're testing and experimenting, this is just the way that I do it. Through experimentation and practice, you'll find your favorite way for you to do it. And of all the ways, that's the correct way, is for you to find how you do it. So again, just trapping that bead between my fingers, holding on to the wire with finger and thumb, basically, middle finger and thumb. And now from here, we're gonna go like that. And so you can see now, hopefully, how that bead is blurry, is wrapped around like that. And now from here, I do like to be able to see and control a little bit more what I'm doing. So we can isolate one wire, which happens to be the wire that didn't have the bead on it, and bring it around, and then isolate the other and bring it around. And we can grip all that and just move this around. And so now that is one of our loops that has a bead in it. Now we could go through and do like how we did previously on our wire frame and alternate the direction that we're making our spirals, but I'm going to make it just a little bit different today, just for the sake of keeping things spicy. And I'm going to slide on another bead about 1/2 inch, maybe 2 centimeters away from the last spiral. And I'm going to take it, and I'm just going to wrap around like that. And I'm going to keep kind of wrapping around like this. And then if you want it a little bit closer, you can just bring that in some like that. And this is going to make like a little lacy, filigree, like loopy bit, which I think, if we're careful, we may be able to make this adaptable to where you could be using a traditional style cabochon, like one that hasn't been grooved. So, and be able to kind of nestle it in, because if you remember, like if you've watched this video, we had started by having a point on the bottom and on each of the sides for us to attach our little loop onto to keep it from shifting around. I'm trying to maybe see if we can figure out a way around that. Okay, so, which is also why we have so much wire, because there's a little bit of experimenting going on here. So yeah, let us start, oh my gosh, by untangling our wire. I found the end of the wire that is this one, that's closest to the front of me. And I'm going to start by making a spiral with a bead in the center. There it goes. Right here in the front of like top and center. I'm going to see if I can't zoom in a little bit. I hesitate to zoom in because I mean, I really want you guys to be able to see what I'm doing, but I'm really bad about staying in frame. And so for all y'all who are fixing to comment, be like, oh my god, stay in frame. I know, and I too am upset with me. So, and I'm not quite doing the exact same with my fingers, but it's that same kind of, that motion evolves and translates into what we're doing here. I am using my thumbnail to pin that wire in place. And then we can kind of just build our wire around like that. Oh, I love it already. Now you could, I'm just gonna say, you could totally stop here, wrap it around the neck twice, and be done. And I absolutely love the way that that looks with like a little jewel right there. But we are going to come around here on the back like that. Use our finger to bend to come up just a little bit. See how that makes a little bit of a prong? It's going to hold on to the back side. And now this wire right here is going to be the one that we thread the bead onto. So pulling, like following that wire all the way around to the end of it. And threading on a bead, I lift up the end of the wire and just let the bead roller coaster its way down. And now from here, I want to make sure that the bead's a little in from the edge there. Like I don't want it to be too close up onto the edge though. We could do that. It would just be a matter of trying to stay consistent, but I want to make like little lobes that are holding on to, almost like a prong setting, holding on to the bead. So again, from here, just, giant bug. I love you, nature, but go away. And I'm just continuing this little wrap around. And so it's making a whole series of rosettes. And we're going to come in and do another little bend along the back. And then we're going to do a bend. And we can come through after the fact and tighten all of this up as well, because it's decorative. We don't have to worry about it shifting when being worn as much, because our stone is already secure. And I feel like, especially for as a beginner, man, it would have been so handy if I had had access to Groovy cabs when I was first starting out wire wrapping, because the hard part of securing the stone is already done. Now we only have to focus on doing the fun, decorative, pretty part. So yeah, there's that, which I'm pretty excited about. So again, picking this side, because that's the way the spiral is going to grow. And already I can feel the wire getting shorter every time. It's just by like maybe 4 or 5 inches of wire. That adds up, because we're probably going to be doing at least 8 of these spirals around the front, perhaps. I don't know, maybe less, but we'll see. So again, and I'm pressing with my fingernail right here, kind of where I want the spiral to end up happening. I'm just building around, again, bracing the bead with my fingers, just whatever it takes to make sure that stuff's happening where I want it to. Now, we could keep doing multiple rotations, but I'm going to leave that one kind of where it's at. Like if I alternate one wrap with 2 wraps with, you know, 1 complete wrap. I don't know. This is what I'm doing. I'd love to see what you're doing. So if you guys follow along with this tutorial, or any of our tutorials really, or if you use any of our cabs and your own original designs, I would love it if you're on Instagram or Facebook, if you could tag us or post onto our Facebook wall with what you've been working on. That way, not just Randy and I, but anybody who stops by our page or searches the, you know, hashtags and stuff will be able to find your work and see what you've been up to as well. So making another little lobe there on the back. I'm gonna, same thing, grabbing the wire. It gets a little easier every time because the wire gets just that little bit shorter. And we're gonna thread a bead on here. Now you can make this look like all sorts of variation with different sizes, colors, and or shapes of beads. Different gauges of wire can get different looks. You could add in some coiling, which I think would make it look just really neat. So there's 1 full rotation is how that looks. And now I'm going to come through and do a 2nd rotation, which just makes it a little bit fuller looking, I think. And sorry, the autofocus on my camera phone, like my phone's camera, has been just wonky. So please bear with me if it gets blurry. And now I'm coming through and doing another bend. And now you can see here, this has a tendency to want to move away from the stone. That will sort of remedy itself after we've joined, like worked all the way around and joined to the other side. So have faith in the process, hopefully. And if not, we'll figure it out. So, ooh, I do love the way that those stones are catching the light and stuff. Love, love, love it. Okay, so I'm gonna stop it. Spending time admiring the stone. You know what? No, I'm not gonna stop taking time to admire the stone. That's half the fun of wire wrapping. So if my tutorials are too long, please keep in mind you did click on my face, but also YouTube has this great feature where you can pop it into, like in the settings, you can pop it into 2 times speed, so that really speeds things up. But I am not about to stop enjoying what I'm doing to be more accommodating of YouTube's algorithm or anything like that. I'm having fun and I'm so glad y'all are here to share this with me. So thank you guys for being here. Oh, this is getting weird. This one's kind of acting up a bit. So whenever it starts getting like, ooh, and the wire's not doing what you would like for it to do, just smush it harder. Like just kind of squish it on into place. That's what I really like about not just parawire, but especially the 20 gauge parawire, is if it starts getting ornery, you can just literally squish it. So it's a very, very soft, very malleable wire. So again, we're gonna come through. Oops. Now also you could use tape or something if you're having a hard time keeping things gripped, but it'll be alright. Like even if things get like super duper weird, it's gonna be okay. Like right there, those 2 wires are a little farther apart from each other than I would have liked for them to have been. That's okay. Okay, so bending that around again. 3, 4, 5, and that one's almost dead center down bottom. Because we now also have the option that we can take this and scooch it a little further around. Yeah, I like that, with a little bit more spacing in between. Okay, again, picking this wire to put the bead on. And this one, I'm going to show you guys. We're going to follow along the entire length. You can see one of the wires is now significantly shorter by like 9 inches shorter than the other, and that's because this is the wire we've kept putting the bead on. So that one, even though it just uses up that extra little bit of wire, it does add up. So that's why we started with such an abundance of wire. Man, I would be so distraught if I got about this far in and then, had, 7 inches of wire left to work with. Oops, punched the camera, but that's fine. So we're going to bring the wire down. Just using my finger to start that bend, and then we can hold the bead in place and just continue, whoops, just continue around. And we only did 1 full wraparound on this one, so I'm going to do 2 on this one. It's so much stuff will become a pattern if you do it intentionally. So it doesn't have to be any sort of particular way. If you find yourself doing something and want it to look intentional, just do it that same way over and over again. Or you can go for a full-on organic look and just have it be straight random chaos. I personally find those pieces really beautiful whenever it's something that just looks like it grew that way. Okay, threading it on another bead, and I am doing the full process in real time with you guys because I want to give you a very realistic expectation of what it takes to go into one of these projects. We are not a 5-minute crafts channel where I just show you something and then boom, it's done and perfect. It's like, no, that's never in the history of ever, in my experience of crafting, has it ever worked out with, I'll just put the stuff in a pile and then boom, it's ready. It takes all the fun out of the job. Okay. Making another little, and again, these beads being round are kind of rolly, so it keeps wanting to, if you squeeze too hard, it just slips off to the side. That's okay. It's gonna be kind of fiddly, but you've got this. Just bringing that around, bending it around. Picking the wire that we're gonna put the bead on. Let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so it's 1, 2. Yeah, this will be our third and last. If we want to keep things symmetrical, we could not, but I don't know, I'm going to try. Symmetry has always been very difficult for me. Oops. And I like to do the harder thing. Because if we kept working every day a little bit at the things that are difficult for us, then they'll soon become a little bit easier, and then a little bit more easy, and then suddenly, after, however long, suddenly after consistent effort over a long period of time, what was difficult now feels like it comes naturally. So, but I guess the trick is to find the fine line between just enough new difficult, that way it's not overwhelming and horrible. Okay, so we did 1 wrap around on that one, so we're going to do 2. There's the second. Okay, so now from here, I'm coming around the back side of the bale and just wrapping. So this is completely an instance where we could choose to stop right here. We could snip it and be done. Well, we'd still have a little bit of touch-up stuff to do, but for the most part, we'd be done. Or we can add more layers. And this is an instance where, again, you don't have to, but I think I'm gonna, because I think it would look amazing. We're gonna add in a spiral, not a spiral, a coil on one of these wires and come through and make this a little bit more ornate. And I think I have I don't know where it went. Maybe it's in this. I'm gonna rummage. It's not in that drawer. It's not in that. Are you in there? No. What about this one? Well, heck. I don't know where it went. So this one? Yes. Okay. Something a lot more along these lines. Just chaos. Yeah. So I'm going to grab a 28 gauge. You could use 24, you could use 26. Well, and I don't know where my 28 gauge went, do I? It's not where it goes. Okay, we're using 26. Change your plans. I'm going to zoom the wire back. Oh, bumping the camera. I'm going to pull off in two? Yeah. 2 arm spans of the 26 gauge wire. And I'm going to begin by selecting, I think I want it to be this wire for really no reason. It could be either. I want to use this one. Ooh, which happens to be the longer of the two. So, sure. And I'm going to just put my pendant that we're making off to, it's hanging down close to the floor now. I'm going to snip off right here because I wanted nice, clean, fresh wire. I could have used nylon gel pliers to straighten it out, but I don't have any right now. So, I'll waste an inch of wire. And I'm going to grab right here, giving myself again about an inch to grip, and then wrapping. I don't know why I'm counting because I'm going to be using up the entire length of the wire, but I do about 10 wraps and then give it a smush. So I'm going to zoom back in for you. So there's 10 wraps and then give it a smush. And now that I've gotten that far in, we can twist this tail wire down and give it a smush. Now, if you saw that part where I had a little bit of a gap, a wider gap, and I smushed, there's now a little bump there. That's okay. It's something to be mindful of, but it's an easy fix whenever you catch it. So I'm just taking that little bit and gripping and twisting. So it's cinching this down, and that tightened up that little loop. But it's just, if you do that a whole bunch and don't fix it as you go, it becomes very difficult to fix if you're, 3 or 4 inches in, and then you go back and start trying to tidy that stuff up. So it's just a big project can still be broken down into just 10 coils at a time. And so we've gotten that little bit, and I've scooched it down. I like working on the end of my wire like this because it gives me room, if you'll notice, for my hand to clear around that end. And so I am just gonna kind of crank this out. This is not a good project, I feel, for using a drill because we have a very thin, very soft core wire, which isn't going to give you a whole lot of resistance for a drill to attach to. Plus, we're still attached to our pendant here on the end, and that would be like flinging around like crazy. Plus, we have an extra wire on the side. So this isn't even, I don't feel like, a good candidate for spinning it over my head. Which is where I think having well-practiced foundation technique of hand coiling, while I do, think it's a good idea to use tools to aid you as much as possible to, preserve your hands, nothing beats having a good foundation of technique, so that when the time comes when the only option is to hand coil, it's not going to destroy your hands because you're used to it. You have good technique, which really, I think the best way to have good technique on this is to try to do every single coil like it's going where it's going to end up. So by trying to have them very close to each other, because again, if you go like this and they're wide apart from each other and you try to smush it down, it makes for kind of uneven, loose wrapping that starts to behave and act funny if your tension gets off. If you can do that loose consistently, then it'll look great. But it's a lot easier for me, I guess. I can only speak from my own experience. So again, if it works for you and you like it, then it's correct. There's no wrong way to art. But for me, it's easier to maintain enough tension that I can remain consistent, because you don't want so much tension that you're bending your wire every single way like that. That's a little too much. And this is always the part that nobody ever wants to hear, but with practice will come progress. So a lot of what people are like, oh my gosh, you're so talented. I'm like, no, you wouldn't be saying that if you saw me doing it for the first like year or two. Like, truthfully, I've only gotten here by practicing just about every single day. So be patient with yourself, be patient with the project, and you will get better. And there's almost speaking again from my own experience, there's a precious rarity now in being new to something. Like whenever you're picking up a new skill or a new you know, oh, there's words for it, but they aren't hard. A new skill set for in your repertoire of like crafting skills. Like if you're picking up bead embroidering or you're picking up wire wrapping, or chainmail is often one that, gosh, it can be tricky to get the hang of it. But you will never be this bad at this ever again. Like from every point beyond right here, you will have more experience. You'll be more knowledgeable. You'll have better like crafter's intuition about what materials to use or what you should do in this instance. Like you're becoming more masterful at what you're doing all the time. So we start out as complete noobs, but very rarely do we get to stay that way if we put in a little bit of practice. So if you wire wrap a piece and you feel like it sucks, like cherish that. Like you're like you did it, you took that first step. So it's okay to be kind of rough at something. And also, I can almost guarantee you're being harder on your own work than what basically anybody other than an internet troll would be. So now I'm having a hard time, y'all, trying to get this wire to come down. There we go. So holding with my pliers on the end, and I'm actually just pushing with my fingernail. I'm blessed with pretty strong nails, but if that isn't working well for you, you could come through and use your pliers, not to grip that core wire, but just to press against it. I'd still need to be holding on with another pair of pliers, but you can come through and hold it kind of like this and push down that way. But you'll want to kind of just incrementally go about it. Now, another way that we could do this is if you wanted to work closer in towards the body of the project, but you have a whole bunch of wire that you don't want to have to work around, is you can just spiral it in like that. And so now, instead of having to move your whole coil down the length of your project, you just unwind whenever you get there. So I'm going to continue doing this a bunch, like a whole bunch. And I know I said I was going to do the tutorial in real time, but this is just a whole lot more of the same. So I am going to go off camera just to finish up. I'm literally doing the exact same thing that I have been doing. I do want to show you one more thing, that something you want to avoid when doing coiling like this is that right there, which I back coiled a little bit, unless that's something that you're looking for. That can be something tricky to fix if you get a little too deep in. So I'm just going to unwind, and now I'm going to come through and continue our coiling. So I will meet you guys right back here with the magic of editing right now. Okay, I lied. We're not done yet. I wanted to show you what I was kind of doing to get, since I'm having difficulty moving this along the length of our core wire, I'm going ahead and spiraling in our core wire and then just scooching this down all the way down to our project. And I wanted to show you this before we got too far in, and I would have hated to have left a step out. There we go. So this is smushed all the way up to where that bend is. So, and now, also y'all, this is a great opportunity if you wanted to do like some weaving or different things, you could totally do that. But yeah, I just wanted to show you that. And now I'm still going to be functioning with this wire, our other core wire, off to the side, and just doing that a whole bunch. So yeah, I'm going to burn through the rest of this wire, and I really think just doing one arm span of the 26 gauge would have been okay, but Parawire really is affordable enough that you can give yourself a lot to work with and then trim it and save it for another project. It doesn't go bad. Okay, so now through the magic of editing, we'll be right back. Okay, so we have about 7 inches left of our weaving wire. Sorry, that's the sound of it rubbing on my desk, which is why I did a lot of this off camera, is because it can get noisy. Okay, so as we get close in here to the end, I am going to start excuse me, pushing the wire around this way and then smushing in, just because there's not nearly so much for me to be able to comfortably grip onto. So any way that gets you there, it's the end result with the art, right? So you'll get there. And I'm using every little bit of this because I wanted to see what about 10 feet of the 26 gauge wrapped around the 20 gauge core wire, like how long does that get us? Because if we were using a 28 gauge, I think it would be about the same for the, like, I think there'd be very minute difference between a 28, 26, and 24 gauge, but if we were wrapping around, let's say, a 16 gauge instead of a 20 gauge core, that's whenever we'd start seeing some length differences. And I don't know, would y'all be interested in seeing just a video side-by-side analysis of that, to be like, this is what 26 gauge, you know, sorry, I'm having like that math meme moment, but like where using 26, 28, 26, and 24 gauge around different thicknesses of core wire, like the same length of each of those. That'd be a lot of examples to make, but I think that would be a really useful information to have just for the sake of knowing. Okay, so this got us 13, almost 14 inches, like 13 and a half inches of coiled wire. And now, the fun part, now that we've done all that coiling, we can come through and just get artsy fartsy with it. And I'm going to be traveling with both of the wires, kind of side by side, like this, and just nestle it around and in. And then we don't even have to go way far behind, we can just go in between. Though we could have it wrap around the back side of the cab too. That might help stabilize it a little bit more. And we don't have to go in between every single one either. We could skip one and go like this. It really is entirely up to you. There is no right or wrong way. And so now from here, we can come up and around, and we can go around the neck. And the more we do this, the more stuff is going to start looking a little bulky, but just keep that in mind. And these wires are poking up a little funny. That's not what I'm going for, so I am going to push it kind of towards the back. Just smushing. When in doubt, smush it out. Like, sorry, I need to get out more. And I'm going to add just a little spiral up here on the bail. And then I'm going to come down this way. And now we can start building up around. Oh gosh. I'm sorry if I was out of frame. I got really absorbed into what I was doing and was not paying attention. And sorry, the only reason well, other than actually being sorry, but I do apologize because there's always somebody in the comments who's like, clearly you're a big dumb McStupid head and you have no idea what you're doing, so I must yell at you loudly. And it's like, okay, thanks. But I really do, try to stay in frame, so bear with me. And we used up that, what was it, 13 to 14 inches really quickly. So... And if you have any little pokey outy bits, we'll just bring that around. And I'm going to bring this around. And I'm going to bring this around the back some more. And we could have incorporated more beads and stuff, or just whatever makes you happy, do that. So now I'm going to take both of our loose ends. Whoop and whoop. And I'm just going to feed them through the bail right there. And I'm going to wrap around the bail kind of behind. And I'm going to go ahead and give this a snip, giving us about 1 inch of space. But yeah, we ended up with less than 2 feet of scrap wire. For each segment, that's probably, 3 feet total, but I would have hated to have, missed out on feeling like I could get nice and adventurous because I was worried about running out of wire. It's really nice to just not have to worry. So we could do another spiral up here on top of the bail, but I think for the first time ever, I have enough spirals. So I am going to use my pliers to put a little bend, boop, just like that. And now I'm going to go through and guide this wire through like this to the other side where we can grip it and then pull it. And since we did that kind of training bend, it makes it a lot easier to maybe get the wire to go where you want it to. That's not wire wrapping in a nutshell. I don't know what is. And then, yeah, we grab it and boop, pull it through to the other side. I love hiding my loose ends in the bail because that way there's no pokey little bits here on the back, there's no pokey little bits on the front, and this stuff tends, I'm not going to say it never does, but it tends to not get caught on, like, if you're using like a metal chain. So I'm just getting my snips in there, I'm giving it a snip, and then smush, 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 and just like that, y'all. Oh my gosh, I was out of frame. I'm zooming back out. I'm so sorry. Just like that. So yeah, just to demonstrate, I snipped and then went in there and smushed, just to get those pokey bits to not be hanging down at all. So that is how this piece has come out. If you guys have any questions, comments, or ideas, please leave them down below. If you're here hanging out with us in the premiere, hey everybody, thank you so much for joining us in the premiere today. If you're not here in the premiere and you're watching this in the future and you don't want to miss out on future premieres, be sure to sign up for our newsletter. Oh god, the back's kind of messy. That's okay though, it's very organic. And I bet you if we slapped some gears on this, this is like hecka steampunk. But you can sign up for our newsletter at backtoearthcreations.com, just there on our homepage. And if you enjoy our free tutorials and would like to support the creation of more of them, as well as get behind the scenes content, exclusive coupons, and all sorts of different stuff, please consider joining our Craft Along Club. we ship out our monthly craft kits through there, but we also do like our digital download template access and everything. More info about that is over, on our website. Links to everything down in the video description. But also, we do monthly craft alongathons where we sell our handmade items, either on a custom basis, or we have auctions, or anything like that that we have going on will be listed on the calendar of events that's on our website as well. And so I'm just going to show you these other pendants side by side also. We also do shop updates of fresh cabs into our shop just about every single Monday, and that's including our fused glass cabochons, labradorite and different gemstone cabochons that we may get into stock. And we have a video out showing how to not just add a groove to your own cabochons, but how to, on our website, select the add a groove option to your cab. So if you're shopping on our website and you'd like a groove added to it, which makes it look like that, there'll be a little box that you can click and it'll check mark it, and then you can click add to cart, and that will it applies the upcharge for us to go through and groove it, but then we'll groove it for you. If the stone that you're looking at doesn't have that option, it's because we've determined it's not a good candidate for being grooved, because some stones are too thin, or they're not, the edge isn't shaped correctly, or something like that. So but yeah, so I really think adding the grooves makes a huge difference in you can decorate it basically however you want from there, because you don't ever have to worry about your stone falling out unless the wire breaks. So, which that's something we'll address in future tutorials. I do hope that this was helpful to you guys. So until next time, happy crafting. Bye.